This is a presentation of Alphacam 2.12.01, Aspire for Alphacam. There's three different demonstrations: presentation of a Planit Flag, a Valance, and then a Newel Post, and each presentation is showing slightly different functionality within Aspire. The first one is going to be the Planit Flag. With that we'll be importing a bitmap, which is the logo and text of Planit. Do some node editing, show how you can manipulate the geometry, do what we call a two-rail sweep. The two-rail sweep is going to create the background of the flag, and then also create some shape from vectors, the vectors being the logo and the Planit text. From within Alphacam we'll launch Aspire. We're going to create a new file, the size of 300 by 150, 12mm thick. We'll have an origin in the center in millimeters. This is an important one to remember to change. Put the resolution to high in this instance. Okay, I'm going to import a bitmap. The bitmap I'm going to use is the Planit logo, which I've got off Marvin. Double click on this and then just make that a little bit larger. We can then align that. Looks about right. Okay, now I'm going to select that and convert to bitmaps. And you'll see these little boxes here. As I select them, when I get to the one that's closest to the shade, it highlights it. Let's fit the vectors. Close on that. If I hover around here and zoom in, I can see there's a bit of an issue on this C. So I click on that and then press N. You see that then brings up these nodes. Now you can manipulate these, you can move them around. If I again hover over one and press the right mouse, I get a series of options. I'm going to delete a few. You either, on the span, you can see the little swiggly line there, or you're on the point. Let's delete the point. Or if you hover over them, you can press D, move them around, and then play around with these controls. Pretty quickly you can get near the shape that you wish. Alternatively, in this instance, because I've already got another C, I'm just going to escape out of there and delete those. Just come out of that command, zoom out a little, hold the control and pan across with the right mouse. Select that, right mouse, and we'll copy that and paste, and then we can drag and drop it back over. Again, panning over using the control and the right mouse. I'm going to remove that, I don't need that, so just select it and delete. And maybe we'll tidy this circle up a little. If we double click on that and press the N, you'll see that it's a series of nodes. Doesn't look like a proper circle, so we'll just delete it, and we'll delete the outside one as well. And there's a circle creation tool over here, so drop that somewhere in the middle of the R. Come out, that looks about okay. Close, apply and close. And then also there's an offset command. Let's offset by maybe 1mm, see what we get. And we want to offset to the outside of this. A little bit too much. We go 0.5. A little better. Close. Select that one and delete. Click in the white area and press F. Puts that to the screen. I'm looking at my business card. I can see that I'm missing the rectangle around the logo here, so we'll go and create a rectangle. Just do that manually. Looks okay around there. Apply and close. I think we're now ready to create some geometry with respect to the to the flag. So we can come into here, let's just hide the bitmap, it's a little simpler to see. So let's create some vectors, and these vectors are going to be similar to the edges of the flag. So we'll draw a curve. I'm just going to freehand these. You see it tells me if I'm going below there, and I want to always maintain slightly above the baseline. So we don't want to go below there. And then we'll come back up, escape on that. We'll repeat that process again. Happy with that, and repeat it once more, maybe down here. Put a little bit more curve on that one. You can always come back and press the N again if you wish and edit these. Move them around. Okay, I think we've got enough geometry there to create our model. So we're going to start by splitting the screen. The bottom side, now we've got this 3D view. We can go into modeling, and within the modeling I'm going to use this 2 rail sweep, and the principle here is that these are the 2 rails and this is the geometry that I'm going to sweep. So holding down the shift, select the 2 rails and then the sweep. We'll apply that. I think we're going to have an issue here because I can see these lines are crossing over each other. So what we can do is we can reverse one of the ends, so that then makes that a little bit easier to see, and we can see then that we're getting the background of our flag. Let's scale that across the width, see what happens with that, and maybe I want to scale that to an exact height. Well, let's scale that to maybe 12mm and apply. That's looking okay. So make sure then that that's going to fit into the material we're going to use, and we'll call this flag. Close on that. Next I'm going to focus in on the logo, and I'm going to do the logo in a different way that I produced the text for the text Planet. So again, we'll come into here now. We'll select the logo, come into this shape, create shape from vectors, and a few options here. Let's just see what happens. We'll apply that, and we can see that that's created quite a bulbous shape. So let's maybe scale to an exact height, 2mm. Maybe even try slightly different. We do it as an angle and limit to height. That's looking a bit better. I may be able to change the angle to 60 degrees. I like about this is it's immediate. That's better. So we'll call this logo. And apply. We'll close that. Come into here. Let's select the geometry for the text. Back into the create shape. This time we'll use this one again, and we'll apply. If we look at that again, we'll see that it's puffing that up. So let's maybe just increase that a little bit. It's getting a little flatter. We'll let's say no limit and see what happens. That gets a bit bulbous, so we'll scale to height. Let's maybe go to 3mm and apply. Not too happy on that one. Maybe reduce that down to 1mm, see what happens again. That's a bit better. And what we could do is we can build up the base height perhaps. So let's bring that up and apply. What the base height does is it gives us a little flat there before we start doing the curve on the top. I think that's a little high, so we'll take that back down to 1 and apply. Call this Planit. So there we have our text and our logo on our banner, on our flag. This is the component tree. You know what? I think it might look better if we could go back and let's have a look at the logo, and we'll change that. And let's try subtracting it rather than adding it and see what the difference we get. What we can see now is it's actually sunk that in, so we've got the logo that's sunk into the banner, to the flag, and the Planit text. That's proud. So we've used a few simple methods here. The import of a bitmap. We created some text, some lines to create the outline of the flag. Converted raster to vector, and then built these up using the create shape from vectors, and we also use the 2-rail sweep for the banner. Presentation number 2 is the Valance, this leaf shaped. We're going to create that. First we create some geometry, some background, and then we use the term cookie cutter to shape this out. I'm going to use some sculpturing to produce a blend in here. We're going to add some text and some textures. Do a 3D copy. Once we've created one of these leaves, we'll copy them and scale them, and then mirror them across to the other side, and then we'll export those to Alphacam. I have a file here that has got some pre-prepared geometries to allow us to model these leaves for the Valance. We'll go straight into the modelling, split the screen into modelling. I'm going to select, holding the shift down, these entities, and then go into the 2-rail sweep. The order that you selected those is important. I selected the rails and then the sweep. We apply that, we'll see immediately we get something happening in the bottom. It's not exactly what we want. It will be once we reverse one of the rails. And also if we now zoom in, we can see that we've got this quite tall at the end here where it's narrow, so I can scale that across the width and that reduces that. I'm also going to scale it to fit an exact height of 12mm, so it'll come out of the material I've got in mind to model this from. Okay, and if we look at the top now, let's just save that away as leaf. While I'm doing that, if you look in the top, you can see that what I've got is, this is the background of the leaf, but we want to cut that back to this geometry. So holding shift and select the boundary, and then I'll go into this command which is clear area of selected components outside the selected vectors, also referred to as the cookie cutter. And again, now we can see that we've actually then, from that background shape, we've now created our leaf following the profile that we created. So just exit out of there, come into this. We're going to focus on the little leaf end, and do that using this method. We'll say no limit and we'll apply, see what we get. Okay, the first thing I notice is I think it's a little bit bulbous, and it appears to be a bit of a problem with how it's interacting with the original shape that we created. That's because it's added to the previous component. What we want to do is we want to merge it. I think the height is a little high, so we'll limit the height. We don't want it 2mm, but we can bring that up and see what we get. Keep coming up with that. Reduce that down. So no limit, and we'll maybe reduce the no. Scale it to an exact height, and let's try taking it up to 12. That was the okay. Maybe we'll just add to the base height a little bit on this. Bring that up. Okay. Now what I can do is I want to merge this in a little bit in this area. I want to tilt it, so there's an option here of tilt. What that allows me to do is I can set the anchor. The anchor is, from this point it's going to be at 0, and where I finish this, it's then going to raise up by the angle which is set here. So let's just reduce that. Keep coming down on that. Maybe let's see what happens if we put 1 degree. Okay, I think we're reasonably happy with that. So let's just call that leaf end. Now if I was modelling this manually, carving it, sculpting it, then I probably want to remove this sort of blend line that I've got. So if I hold the shift and take both of those, then I can go into what we call the sculpting tools, which is quite unique within Aspire. It tells me that it's going to be baked. By baking them, it breaks them into a single model. Then I've got this option here of a diameter of a sculpting tool and a strength. So I'm going to leave that around about this. I've got it on the tool here, and let's just put it there, and as you see, as I keep merging this in here, then we're removing some of those lines that were created as separate models, merging them in. Just set the twiddle that allows me then to just zoom in on different areas. So let's just come and have a look this area here, and you'll then get a better idea. So come back to the tool, what's happening. Maybe reduce the diameter of that a little. So as I'm coming around here, it's just cleaning this up. The strengths may be a little high on that. Allows you to blend this in. Maybe we'll look at removing, coming up this valley, just blending that in. A very powerful part of the software, which is something you need to play with to get good at. I'm quite happy with that, so I'm going to keep it and say OK. I'll click back in here, press F, which takes it and fits it back into this view. Right, we're going to look at creating something on this dome. So select the geometry, come into here, and I want the base height to be 0. Let's say no limit, and apply. I can see we've got quite a bulbous dome there, so maybe we should be reducing the angle on that. I'm going to put that to about 45. Quite happy with that. So let's save that away as dome. Next I want to create a border around this dome between these two ellipses, so we'll select those two geometries and then this, and this is what we're going to sweep between these two using the two rail sweep again. Now it's obvious that that is a lot wider than the span between the two, but the software automatically compensates that for us. Just apply, and if we zoom in on here, we'll see that that's quite high, so maybe we'll scale that to an exact height of 4 or something like that. And that's now wrapping that on top, or merging it on top of the dome that we created. So let's call that border and apply that and close. Now if I click in here, let's just take maybe you can see that there's a bit of an issue down this bottom area as to where that is merging. Well, it's not merging. So what we can do, we can drag and drop that down. It becomes a little bit more obvious now. Let's just click out of there, drag and drop that down, and you can see there's an overlap. So if I can use the combine mode and I'll merge that, and now we've got a nice blend in between the two. Okay, back into our geometry, and into here we're going to create some text. So we'll come into drawing, into text. I've been informed that Plantagenet Cherokee is a very good font to use for this. I've got it 70 millimeters high. Let's put the version 2012 and apply. We'll close on that. While I've got that active, shift and select the inner ellipse, and then we'll centralize those. Select that again, and that's come in with the kerning that's developed with the font. However, I think the spacing between these two is a little bit tight, so I've got the option here of editing that, and if I hover between these and then press, I've got the shift key held down. If I don't have the shift key held down, it moves it to the left. If I've got the shift key held down, it moves it to the right. I think I'm happy with those. So we'll just escape out of that. We'll reselect them, shift down, take our ellipse again, and recenter and close. Now that modifying of the kerning is only available if you leave that as text. If you start pressing the N and modifying the nodes, then you lose that functionality. We'll come back into modeling. We'll do, let's leave this and see what we get. Apply down at the bottom there. Okay, maybe we'll take the angle up. Take the angle up a bit more. We'll limit to a height 2 millimeters and apply. Yeah, I think we like that, and so we'll just save that away as 2012. Apply and close. Okay, at the back of this now I'd like to put some texture. So what I'm going to do is, I've got an option of over here, create a component from selected bitmap. The component is going to be created from this bitmap, which is bark. Click on that and we'll just centralize that within the material. Holding shift down with that active, I click on one of these central ones and I want to bring that in, and so my bitmap is a little bit larger than the inner ellipse. Now if you look in this bottom window down here, you can see that's quite a lot of noise associated with that bitmap, so we can smooth that clicking onto this icon. Put that up to the max. say OK. As we look here, we'll also notice that it's actually overlapping by the size of the bitmap, so I want to cut that back. So while I've got that active, hold Shift, select the inner ellipse and the text, and we'll use our cookie cutter again. Like that, what it's produced. However, I think it would look better if I reduce that to subtract rather than add. So now that's at the back of my text and on the top of my dome. We can see that that's now following the curvature, as is the text of the dome that we created. We'll come back in here, we'll hover in this area. Let's just zoom out on that so we can see what's happening. And we're going to work on this small leaf. So again, this is going to be created using a 2-rail sweep. These two, I know I'm going to have to reverse one of those, and let's scale it across the width. Okay, we're happy with that. We'll call that small leaf. Close that. Now if I double click on it, and once I get these transform nodes and I hold Control, I can then move that and it creates me a copy, and then scale that down a little bit from here, maybe rotate it round a little bit, 40 degrees or so. We'll move that over just so it's overlapping. I didn't create a copy, did it? What happened there? Let's just edit, undo, move. We'll undo a few things here. Select it, double click, Control and drop. That's better. Okay, so let's rotate it round by our 45 degrees, a little bit more. We'll scale that down, nudge it into place. I'm happy with that. The one thing I've noticed is I think I want to use merge that rather than, so that's sitting on the top there now. That's better. So again, Control and move. Scale it down again. Rotate it round and move it into position. Quite like the look of that. Maybe a little bit further around here so it's just overlapping. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just press F to escape out of there. Now what I want to do is I want to mirror these leaves that I've created on the left hand side over to the right hand side. So again, holding Shift, let's select those. Pressing the Control down and hitting H then gives me a horizontal mirror. That's done everything for us. We'll then come back in here, just select that one, hold Shift down to the bottom and select then convert and export to Alphacam. We'll triangulate those and export to Alphacam. We'll come into Alphacam and there is our STL model ready to machine. Now there's one final little trick I want to show you. Back in here, we'll just close that now. With those active, I'm just going to say create a bounding vector for those components. We'll then come back into the drawing mode, and I should be able to select that. That's going all the way around the outside, and export there. And then again back into there. We switch this off, and that's now created me a bounding geometry, which will be very useful for pocketing or machining that out around the outside. So using a series of 2-rail sweeps, we've also imported a bitmap, created some texture, wrapped that on top of a dome. We've then created this Valance. Presentation 3 is a Newel Post. It's actually going to be broken down into 2 parts. First part is we'll create this motif on the top here, and the bottom part, the second half, will be we're creating this bottom half of the Newel Post. We'll be exporting some geometry as a boundary for the top of the Newel Post to fit the motif that you see there. We'll be editing a 3D model, and then again we'll export that back into Alphacam. This presentation we're going to focus on this semicircular face here, extract some geometry to define the boundary, which we'll then take into Aspire and use that to wrap a model and control the boundaries of a model. So let's launch Aspire and create a new file. I want that to be 200 by 200 in the center, and we'll have that at a very high resolution. We'll come back into Alphacam. I'm going to get that geometry, so let's just select a work plane from the solid model face, and then we'll extract the geometry around that face, which is this one. It asks me to set the Z depth, so I want it just to be of 0, so select here and then repeat that. I'm now ready to export that to Aspire, so we'll say export to Aspire this geometry, and if we come back into Aspire we can then paste that in. We're still in the drawing command. I'm going to go into the modelling and come into this, which allows me to import a model, a previous created one. This is a flourish. This is created on the Vector 3D website, 3D art website. It's $25 to purchase. And then holding the Shift key down, with that already selected, I can then centralize that. Now, although that looks okay, I think I want to just drag that down a little bit, and while we've still got that in that mode, maybe just stretch that to show a little bit of power of Aspire. Okay, so this is our model, and what I wish to do is maybe split this part off, and then I'll copy that and rotate it to augment this original model that we've purchased. So to do that, I'm going to come, well, let's just start by maybe splitting and tiling the windows horizontally, then we can see a little bit what's going on as well. We'll zoom in on here. That's what we're going to focus on. We'll do something similar over here so we can see what's happening as we go along. So I want to split that through here. So going into the drawing, I select this draw polyline, bringing that down almost vertical into this little gully here, and then coming round across here and then down. Escape out of that. Select it, then press N, which gives me the nodes. What I wish to do is then window these two and press S, which allows me then to be able to, that smooths it, and to be able to manipulate those a little bit better. So we're coming in, we've pulled that one round as well. So that's going to be my split line. So back into the modelling, we see we've got a single model there. So we'll select the model, escape out of there, select the model, hold shift and the split line, and then we'll go to this command which is split the selected component using a vector, shown by little scissors. And what we'll see up at the top there is it then creates me, splits that model, and we have the two models. While I'm here, I'm going to come into rename, and we'll just rename that leaf. Maybe zoom out a little. And I now wish to copy that and rotate it and manipulate it. So we'll double click on it, we'll press Ctrl and Shift, and now here's my copy. Maybe spin that around. See immediately what's happening here. Drag that down, make it a little bit smaller. Stretch it up a little bit there. Bring that back a little. Stretch it up a little. Okay, so I'm happy with that. When we're happy with that, we'll just escape out of there. What we did in one of the previous presentations, if I just press F, allows me to scale that. Select the model, Control and Shift, and then press H. That will give me then the horizontal copy of that, which you can see then that's been built up over in our component tree. I now wish to export that back across to Alphacam. So selecting the top one and the Shift, export to Alphacam. It shows a triangulation of 0.01, something like that. And then we'll say export to Alphacam. Go into Alphacam, and there we have, let's just cancel that work plane. There we have our modified flourish. For the second part of the Newel Post presentation, we're going to look at this work plane and this geometry on there. That's defining the work plane. See that that's set inside the model. The reason for that will become clear as we progress. Now I want to export to Aspire the geometry defining the boundary again, and this time we'll also export the solid model of the Newel Post. Finish. We'll come into Aspire, look at a new file. Let's make that maybe 1500 high. We'll again set that to very high resolution. OK on that. And right mouse and we'll paste. What we'll see there now is we split this vertically, that we have part of the solid and also the plane with the geometry from for the boundary. So I'm going to come into the modelling. I'm going to just switch this off for the moment. So what we've got is this is lying flat on that face, and then onto there we're going to import a new model, and this time we're going to bring in the grapes. This is actually, our version of this is free on the installation CD. And while we've got that active, we'll just press Shift, and I want to position this vertically. In a moment we're now going to manipulate that and stretch it into this boundary. Well, actually what I want to do is just put that up towards the top. And if we zoom in here, we're going to concentrate now on this grapes. Now what I could do is I could use the transform mode and drag these in, but that's not the best way to make this fit inside this angled box. The best way to do that is use what we call the distort selected objects. Now we're going to use this bounding box, and we'll apply that. Now what I want to do next, if I just hover on this has now got a straight line. Hover on that and I press the B, it then gives me these two curves which I can then manipulate. If you look over on the right hand side, this is just to show you how powerful this is, how much you can distort that. I'm going to hover back over that and press L, and that will bring that back down to vertical. Now I'm just going to use these nodes to bring these in a little. Okay, we'll just transform that object, bring it down a little bit so we're not at the top. Edit the envelope, bring them in a little bit more again. So we'll close on that. Now I want to do a copy of this and bring it down below. So I hold Shift and Control. Shift and Control, I can then drag that down. The Control gives me a copy, and the Shift allows it to come down vertically. So we'll accept that. We'll see we've got a copy again up here in the component tree. Now same thing again, I wish to distort this a little, so select Distort Object. We can use the Edit the Envelope, and let's just bring that in again a little bit. Get in at the bottom. Get some idea at the top in a moment. Now you just transform that, we'll bring that down a little. So we want that just so it's overlapping. We zoom in on this window here and see what we're getting. Yeah, I think that's looking okay. Maybe just come back into here, onto the Edit Envelope, Command again, and then we can close on that. I just want to take that up a little because it looked a little stretched, and also to ensure that it's okay at the bottom. Next I think we need to focus on this area here and clean this up a little bit. Next I wish to centralize these about that boundary. So select the pair of them and just group them. Then we'll select that boundary and the group, and we'll center the objects. Let's then put them best fit within our bounding box. Now if we switch back on our STL file, what we'll see is we've got those that they're just coming through because they were based on that work plane. That's how we created them. But this Newel Post has actually got some shape to it. It's not a flat plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come onto here and say Combine Mode, and I wish to add them. So now they're sitting proud of that, but they're also following the shape of that of the top of the Newel Post. Now we're getting almost ready to export this back to Alphacam, but I don't want to export the Newel Post model back again. All I'm interested in is really the grapes and anything underneath that has been created to sit it on the right work plane. So I'm just going to select the model and select the grapes and use this cookie cutter select the area outside the grapes. So what we're left with now is let's just switch these grapes off. You'll see that we've got just this shape here, which is the wedge shape. That shows it quite well. The wedge shape that's coming from that flat plane and then building that back up onto the top of the shaped plane that we had, surface. So we're now ready to export that back into Alphacam. So we'll select Shift, that will select that group, export to Alphacam. We'll triangulate, converting it into an STL, and then we can export that to Alphacam. We'll come over to Alphacam. We've now got, and let's just cancel that work plane. We can now see, so that's built that up, and it's put that then in place in situ on that work plane. If we just switch off, let's switch off the solid model, and you can see then what we've actually got, because we've got the work plane there, and then we can see that's quite a good view of it. You see exactly what we've actually achieved there. So this is the wedge shape, and it's wedged because it's then following the shape that we imported originally into Aspire along with the work plane. All that's left is for me to thank you for your time. There's lots of associated tutorials for Aspire. Please view those and enjoy the software. Thank you very much.